We've always been close, intimate even. That never really changed, not even after Harry. Those words didn't come from a gossip blog or an angry ex. They came from Markus Anderson himself, a man who was once called Meghan Markle's other half. The story you're about to hear isn't gentle. It's huge, a story hidden beneath secrets, polished smiles, and royal titles. Inside a world of power games, forbidden's loyalty, and one man who knew everything. Forbidden's loyalty, and one man who knew everything. The quote, "We've always been close," wasn't supposed to reach the world. It was whispered in a private conversation, a moment of honesty that somehow got out. When the confession came out, it didn't just light up tabloids, it destroyed the very idea of who Meghan Markle was and what her marriage meant. Because if what Markus said was true, then the fairy tale between Meghan and Prince Harry wasn't built on a clean start. It was layered with loyalty, secrets, and something that wouldn't die, an old connection buried under royal perfection. For years, Markus Anderson was the one person in Meghan's life before the crown, before the cameras, before Harry ever showed up. He wasn't just a background character. He was the architect of her rise, her mirror, her closest friend, and some say the only person who really knew how to control her. So when he finally spoke, when that confession leaked, the world began to realize something scary. The most dangerous betrayals don't always come from enemies. Sometimes they come from the people who built you. Before Markus Anderson became a headline, he was simply Markus from Ontario. A kid who understood people better than he understood himself. He wasn't born rich. He built his way up through charm and a gift for making powerful people feel special. Markus climbed into high society. His big break came with Soho House, an exclusive members-only club known for privacy, power, and secrets. There, Markus became more than a manager. He became a gatekeeper, a man who could decide who got in, who stayed out, and who got noticed. That's where he met Meghan Markle. She wasn't a duchess then, just an ambitious actress from Los Angeles filming suits in Toronto. Their connection was instant, not romantic at first, but intense. Meghan was ambitious. Markus was connected. Together, they became unstoppable. He opened doors she couldn't, introduced her to important people. He understood how the game worked, how charm could be a ladder. And in Meghan, he found the perfect climber. But beneath their glamorous nights and travel photos, something deeper formed, an emotional bond that blurred every line. He wasn't just her best friend. He was her anchor, her image helper, her safety net. And when Meghan began to rise, when her world expanded from red carpets to royalty, Markus was always there, smiling quietly in the background, waiting, watching, protecting the woman he had helped shape into someone the world couldn't stop talking about. Long before Meghan's royal title, there was a small, glittering world that existed just for her and Markus. They traveled together: Madrid, Istanbul, London, always in style, always just out of public view. Friends who saw them together often said their connection was special. They could communicate through looks, finish each other's sentences, and disappear into private corners like two people sharing a secret. Language. When Meghan was uncertain about her future, Markus reminded her of her worth. When she needed new opportunities, Markus knew exactly who to call. He curated her life like a brand, introducing her to designers, producers, and eventually royalty. Because in 2016, it was Markus who arranged her stay at Soho Farmhouse, a quiet luxury retreat. Very place where, according to insiders, Meghan Markle met Prince Harry for the first time. Some call it fate, others call it planning. Either way, Markus was the bridge between Meghan's old life and her new one, the man who made her royal love story possible. But what no one knew was that behind that introduction, their bond didn't fade. It evolved quietly, secretly, and powerfully. Meghan may have married a prince, but Markus remained her shadow, her constant, her unfinished story. And years later, when he finally said those words, "We've always been close," even after Harry, it didn't sound like bragging. It sounded like a truth that had been waiting to be heard. Because maybe, just maybe, Meghan never really left Markus behind. By 2016, Meghan Markle's world was already carefully designed. And at the center of that design was Markus Anderson. So when Prince Harry appeared, many believed it was just another connection arranged through Markus' web of influence. The meeting was simple on the surface: a weekend at Soho Farmhouse, a dinner, a few drinks, and introductions through friends. But behind the scenes, Markus was the quiet puppeteer. He'd booked Meghan's stay, handled the invites, and coordinated her guest list. When Meghan met Harry, sparks flew instantly. She called Markus that night, laughing and nervous like a teenager after a first date. "He's different," she told him. Markus reportedly smiled and said, "Then make sure he sees the version of you the world doesn't." It was advice that would change her life, but it also created something else: an unspoken triangle. Harry saw Meghan as the woman who would free him from royal life. Markus saw her as the woman he helped create. From that moment, their worlds began to overlap in dangerous ways. At first, Markus and Harry got along. They'd share dinners, drinks, and laughs. But Harry noticed how Meghan always acted differently around Markus. She was looser, more confident, more herself. And for a man already worried, it planted a seed he couldn't ignore. As their romance grew, so did Markus' presence. He was at every milestone: the secret trips, the engagement celebrations, the pre-wedding parties, always by Meghan's side, always trusted, and always watching. No one questioned it until people began to notice something else. Markus wasn't just part of the story, he was woven into the heart of it. By the time the royal wedding arrived in 2018, Markus Anderson wasn't just a guest. He was practically family, seated in a place of honor. He watched the world celebrate a love story he'd helped create. But even in that moment of joy, whispers were already circulating. Palace staff had begun to notice something different. Meghan took Markus calls late at night. His name came up in planning meetings, private trips, and quiet dinners. Whenever Meghan felt overwhelmed, it was Markus she turned to, not her husband. To outsiders, he was just an old friend. But to those who worked behind palace walls, Markus was a storm that never passed. Harry at first ignored the rumors. He trusted Meghan. He wanted to believe her loyalty was as deep as his. But small things began to bother him, moments that didn't feel right. A text message she quickly deleted, a private lunch she brushed off as just catching up. In one tense moment, a palace aide recalled hearing Harry mutter, "Why does he still need to be around?" Meghan's answer was cold, "Because he's the only one who's never left." That sentence stayed with him. Even after moving to America, Markus' shadow followed. He was present at private events, baby showers, and dinners. Their friendship, instead of fading with distance, seemed to grow stronger. And when a journalist finally approached Markus for a casual conversation, the one that would later lead to his confession, he didn't deny anything. Instead, he smiled and said something that made the air go cold. People think this story ended when she married Harry. It didn't. It just changed form. The words were never meant to be printed. Markus' confession was made off the record, shared over drinks in a moment that probably felt harmless to him. But the journalist who heard it couldn't ignore its weight. Days later, a whisper became a headline. Then a headline became a storm. "We've always been close, even after Harry." That single sentence tore through every image the royal couple had tried to build. Within hours, news outlets were analyzing every photo, every timeline, every gesture that suddenly carried new meaning. Inside the palace, silence filled the air like fog. Phones buzzed, statements were drafted, and aides scrambled to contain what couldn't be contained. The words were out there, and they couldn't be taken back. Prince Harry reportedly went quiet. For days, he said nothing. Then came anger, confusion, and the kind of heartbreak that doesn't make it into press releases. He started looking back through the years, connecting dots that once seemed harmless: the messages, the calls, the way Meghan's face softened whenever Markus' name came up. Meghan, for her part, denied any wrongdoing. She called it a twisted attempt to destroy her family. But even as she spoke, Markus refused to clarify or take back his statement. He simply vanished from the spotlight, leaving his words to echo in the public's mind. Behind the scenes, royal officials feared something bigger: that the story wasn't just about friendship or betrayal. It was about what the world might uncover next, and what else Markus could say if he ever chose to keep talking. Because if one confession could shake the monarchy's most modern couple, what would a second one do? When the confession finally exploded into public view, Prince Harry didn't rush to defend or deny. He withdrew. Those closest to him said he stopped taking calls for days, spending hours pacing through the garden of their Montecito home. He wasn't angry at the headlines. He was angry at himself for not seeing the signs. For years, Harry had believed that his love story was his redemption, proof that he could create the peace his mother never found. But now, every moment replayed in his mind with new meaning. The messages Meghan hid behind half smiles. The business trips that lined up with Markus' travel photos. The strange loyalty she always showed him no matter the argument. He wanted to believe it was just friendship, but the tone of Markus' confession made that impossible. The word intimate echoed in his head like a curse. Sources said the tension between Harry and Meghan became unbearable. There were nights when the shouting could be heard from outside their gate. Arguments that began over small things but always came back to one name: Markus. One evening, Harry reportedly found a folder of old photos on Meghan's laptop. Pictures from their early years in Toronto before the crown, before the chaos. There, in almost every image, was Markus smiling beside her, hand on her shoulder, the same closeness Harry once though. T was innocent. That night, Harry didn't sleep. By morning, he was gone, checked into a quiet retreat in Aspen to clear his head. It was the first real distance between them since they left the palace, and behind him, in that massive California mansion built on love and privacy, Meghan was left to confront a question she couldn't answer. Had she truly moved on from the man who helped her rise, or had she only built a new life on top of an old one? While Harry and Meghan's marriage cracked behind closed doors, the British establishment was panicking in silence. The royal family had spent years trying to modernize its image after the couple's dramatic exit, but now, the headlines weren't about racism, tabloids, or royal rules. They were about something far worse: intimacy, betrayal, and emotional secrets. Inside Buckingham Palace, aides held late-night meetings to discuss damage control. One advisor reportedly said, "This isn't about Meghan anymore. It's about what he might know, that he was Markus." Because Markus Anderson wasn't just a socialite. He'd been inside their homes, flown on their planes, attended their private events. He knew things. He'd seen things. And if one confession could unravel years of palace PR, what would happen if he spoke again? Within days, legal teams began quietly investigating how the leak occurred. Confidentiality agreements were reviewed, NDAs were reinforced, but none of it mattered. The story had already done its damage. Behind the scenes, William and Kate were reportedly furious not at Meghan, but at the renewed chaos threatening the monarchy. One palace aide claimed William told a senior staffer, "We survived the Oprah fallout, but this makes us look like fools." The monarchy, for all its tradition and control, had been outplayed by one man, a man who didn't even belong to their world. And for the first time, the palace realized that Markus Anderson might be more dangerous in silence than he ever was in speech. In the end, every fairy tale demands a price. For Meghan, it was her peace; for Harry, his trust. And for Markus Anderson, the man who lit the match, it was his reputation. After all of this, Harry returned home with Meghan. Whether forgiveness followed, no one truly knows. Publicly, they smiled. Privately, they rebuilt what they could. But insiders say something had changed forever, an invisible line neither dared to cross again. Meghan, once surrounded by friends and allies, grew quieter. Her circle shrank, her trust thinned, and Markus. He faded into the same background he'd once ruled, occasionally spotted in London cafes, always with that calm smile that made people wonder what else he knew. The world moved on, but the question never did. Was Markus telling the truth, or was it revenge? Was he protecting Meghan, or finally freeing himself from her shadow in a way? It doesn't matter anymore. Because what his confession exposed was far bigger than scandal. It revealed the human truth behind every royal story, that beneath the crowns and titles, behind every polished image, there are fragile people holding secrets they can no longer bear. And sometimes all it takes is one sentence to bring the entire illusion crashing down.